I have all my life been optimistic and thinking that things were going to get better. Uh, I could go on at length about some of the things that have reinforced that confidence and optimism that have happened. One of them being we managed to stop the building of more nuclear plants by working together with people and getting it on the ballot and having a vote. And the people rose up and did the right thing, in my opinion. Um, it goes back when I was a student at the University of Oregon, and the football program wanted to build a new stadium, which became Autzen Stadium eventually, and they wanted to raise our student incidental fees, and that's how I got started in politics, I guess, uh, because we got up a plebiscite saying that they shouldn't be able to raise our fees to build the stadium, that the alums should pay for it. And we got it on the ballot, and to my amazement, we thought the Greeks, fraternity, sorority people, and the athletes would get together and vote in a block to defeat our our plebiscite, but they didn't. It passed, and oh my goodness, you can get people to do things if you go out and talk with them and share ideas and information. But several years ago, as my concerns about the environment increased, I heard from an anthropologist who said that his studies of the development of the human species, going back maybe a little before we were human, uh, was that as we came out of the caves and went out onto the plain, we had to chase down antelopes and various uh, wild animals to eat them, and it was a tough game. And sometimes we went some time without anything to eat or very little. And so when we would harvest an animal, we would feast and gorge and gain weight and develop a thin layer of fat all over our body to store that energy for the next period of drought or of famine, temporary famine. And that's how the human genome developed, that you need to eat a lot when you get a chance. And he said there's no gene in that genome that says don't eat anything that's within arm's reach. What we've what the To the extent we do control our weight, it's based on things we've learned, not things that are in our innate reactions to things. And you think about that, and you hear on the news yesterday that the United States is setting a record this year for the amount of oil uh, it's pumped and gas it's produced, and how the Democratic administration wants to drive the price of gasoline down to fight inflation, which is a rather nice way of saying to get the voters to support Democratic candidates, particularly our incumbent president, because gas isn't too expensive. And in the face of our rejoining the Paris uh, uh, climate change accords, which Trump took us out of, and our president announcing that climate change is the uh, monumental, what's the word? It's a big one, existential threat of our time. Then, when I came back from Nicaragua last March and discovered that the president had just announced that he was approving the Willow Project, and in the same article that announced that, the person for the Associated Press that wrote the article said, and by the way, it's projected the amount of carbon dioxide that will be released from the oil that's drilled in that Willow Project in an environmental area in Alaska, the amount of carbon released in the next 10 years from the oil drilled out of that wilderness area will exceed the amount of carbon that's being saved by all the electric cars in the United States today. And that's, of course, something that is being told on the news to somebody who was made a financial sacrifice 5 years ago to buy an all electric car, and this year another sacrifice to put solar panels on my roof. Now, if I live another 5 or 6 or 8 years, those solar panels may pay themselves off, but it's not going to be next year. Uh, so I don't think, I look around and I see people are still buying heavier cars. They're still flying all over the place. I'm getting ready to fly to Central America myself in 9 days. But we are spending and we're driving and we're burning fuel, and people haven't gotten the attitude that I remember at the end of the Second World War, when everyone was mobilized. People were conserving on everything. The wages were frozen, but they were still buying war bonds to help with the war effort. I'm sure it wasn't everyone, but from my experience with people, it seemed like everyone was focused on what we needed to do to overcome the threat of Hitler. That isn't what the attitude is among American people now. 3,000 car dealers just signed a letter and sent it to the president. Oh, you got to slow down on this electric car business. That's not a good deal. Down toward the end of the letter, they did say something very truthful, and that is that the big deal is the price of the electric car. They've got to get that price down. But in the meantime, it isn't happening, and it's going to be a mess, and it's going to, whatever disasters climate change can bring are going to happen. We're burning more carbon this year than we did last year. Even though we have these horrible things happening, like in Hawaii, people are just, they can't resist something they can get a hold of and put in their mouth. It's very unfortunate, but it's what I've concluded, and I hope, dear viewer, that you see a more optimistic way, but don't tell me about little things that are going to turn it. It's going to have to be a big thing. It's going to have to be a total awareness, a revolution of consciousness it's going to take. And I'll be happy to join. I've already joined with an electric car and solar panels on my roof. And I would also happily sacrifice a significant amount of my cash flow to help with this project. But I have to say, I have become very pessimistic.